Hello, my name is Bradley, and today we'll be working on a Sony Vaio laptop. This particular model is a Sony Vaio VPCZ1 3EGX. Um, I already have it sort of torn apart. When I tried to make the first video, I didn't have any audio, so before I got too far ahead, I went ahead and went for take two. But first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and remove the battery and go ahead and remove the RAM cover, and then remove the two sticks of RAM. After you do that, all the screws, there's screws here that go on this white plate, and there's two screws in the front, all these screws here. These screws do come in two different sizes. They have longer ones, and they got some shorter ones, and then they have some tiny ones. I want to try to remember where they go the best you can. Just make it putting it back together a lot easier. After you get all the screws out, you just want to go ahead and open the lid. Right here where the keyboard is, this top piece will come up, and there will be a cable. This cable right here, this ribbon cable, will be tied in a port right here on the board. It just pulls straight up, pops right off, and then you can go ahead and set it aside, the top half. That cable goes, it looks like, to the main controller board for all the stuff here in the top plate, like the keyboard, trackpad, fingerprint scanner, hotkeys, switches, keyboard illumination, all that stuff. Sony has jam-packed into this lid. So we'll go ahead and set the lid off to the side. Now that we have the laptop apart, we're aiming for the heatsink for the GPU and the CPU attach. That would be underneath this board here, which would more than likely be the main portion of the motherboard. Looks like they got some ribbon cables that go to other daughter boards that control other functions of the computer. But right here is what we're going for. This computer was overheating. I tried to blow it out before I took it apart, but it didn't seem to do any good. So I'm going to go and reapply some new thermal grease. I got some Thermaltake TG-7 thermal grease I'm going to apply to the heatsink for the GPU and the CPU after I clean it off. But it looks like we got some other cables here, so we're now going to be focusing on removing this board. This laptop actually uses a very tiny solid state board. Not too sure what form. Almost looks like normal SATA. Might be M SATA. Really not too sure. It looks like it has the option for dual hard drives, because here's the one hard drive and that's plugged in. It looks like you can add a secondary chip drive. So let's go ahead and get this thing apart. Looks like the cd-rom's half of the computer. Taking a quick glance here, looks like the Ethernet port jack is right here. This cable, we'll see if I can't get this out of the way. I got some adhesive holding it down along with some tape. Just make sure you don't unplug any other connectors and forget to plug them back in. So we'll go ahead and get that jack out of the way. Looks like we have two ribbon. Oh, we got one CMOS battery. Go ahead and unplug that. think this is a Bluetooth cable. It looks like it's running across. This probably goes to the fan, and this connector here up over here goes to the LCD. And you got your Wi-Fi card, 2 antenna wires, ribbon cable for the not too sure what that goes to. This goes to the hard drives, and these 3 ribbon cables here I'm not sure of as well, but I'm gonna try to undo as little cables as possible. These are pretty tiny, and I really don't want to fuss with them trying to put them back. Let's see if I can get this to flip up here. Oh, almost got it. There we go. So we'll go ahead and unplug that cable. This one here. Go ahead and pull that one off. Up there's another ribbon cable below that. Oh my. Boy, Sony jammed a lot of stuff in here. I've never previously taken one of these apart, so this is the first time I've ever taken one of these apart. Take my tweezers here. See if I can't get this to lift up. Looks like not much holding it on there. Looks like something else is holding it on there. We'll go ahead and undo this ribbon cable here. At least attempt to. Boy, this is going to be fun putting back together. Okay. Now that I have that apart, still looks like I have something holding it down. And that could possibly be the Wi-Fi card screw here underneath these cables. Try to get this off. They make an actual tool for this. I don't have it. So hold a little bit of pressure there and see if I'm going to get lucky here with this screw. Go ahead and take that screw off and set it in my tray. Off to the side there. And we'll go ahead and just pull the wireless card out and get it out of the way. That does not look like it was attached to anything else. I'm going to go ahead and remove the security lock. Seems like they might have a screw hidden over here. Aha, and they do. Hidden screw. Go ahead and unscrew that. And see how I can get, is there another one? And there is another screw. Yeah, just be very careful when you work on any laptop and you go to pull the board out. I mean, there could be a screw somewhere that you missed, and you don't want to cause any undue damage to the board. Boy, whoops, got the camera there. Here we go. Looks like we're gonna have to undo this cable. Go ahead and flip that up. Like I said earlier, I'm gonna have a good time putting these ribbon cables back in. It's not gonna be an easy task. Let me grab another tool here. See if I can't get these ribbon cables out. These connectors here just push in. So there's no locking clip. Pretty much just held in by friction, which they can be a little difficult to get out sometimes. I'm not a big fan of them. Might have to just go ahead and remove the cd-rom tray as well. Go ahead and undo that screw right there. And see if I can't get this thing to lift out of here. There must be a screw somewhere. Sometimes they like to hide screws under the yellow tape or other tape to prevent you from taking things apart. Usually just run a screwdriver over it to see if I hit any little divots. But something is definitely still holding this board in considerably well. So we're just gonna go for it here at this point. I'm not too sure what's still holding it in. I don't know if it's the power pins. Oh. Starting to get somewhere. Let me just take a quick peek under here. Pull that out. Pull those two ribbon cables. Okay. Looks like I got the board out. I'm gonna go ahead and try to flip it over here. Okay. Now that I have the main portion of the motherboard flipped over here, we're gonna be focusing on here and here. This, not too sure which one's which, but these are either your CPU and GPU or GPU and CPU. So these two screws are going to need to be unscrewed. Let me go ahead and switch to the 2.5 bit again. I'll go ahead and leave that out, so I'll be needing. There we go. Go ahead and screw that one. And unscrew that one. Almost out. I heard a screw drop in here somewhere. I don't see it anymore. Well, I'll come across it. On the back side of the board, you're going to want to go ahead and remove this heatsink they have here. What does that say? Okay. Oh, there we go, I found it. So now we should be able to remove the fan. Go ahead and get the Bluetooth cable out of my way there. Flip this back over. All we're gonna do is, yeah, I think it needs some more thermal grease there. It looks a little cooked. Go ahead and remove the fan. Now, if you can see, you have all this old thermal grease on the heatsink. It looks like they did not use thermal grease. It looks like they used thermal tape. That's thermal tape, that's thermal tape. And right under here, this is thermal tape. I'm not a big fan of thermal tape. Excuse me 1 second, I'll have to get some isopropyl alcohol. You want to use at least 91%. That's what I like to use. Yeah, you can get cheap off-brand stuff, but then either a piece of paper towel or a Q-tip will do to get this off. Go ahead and clean that up. This is the CPU right there. Just get some alcohol on your paper towel or Q-tip and just, yeah, this stuff's nice and kind of crusty. Yeah, definitely needs to have this done. This thermal grease that's on here is very, very dry, old. just work at it. Might need to get some more fresh alcohol. It evaporates relatively quickly. Sometimes right around the edges here you can just, sometimes it will just flake up, get so dried up. You definitely don't, if you do this, which is not suggested even though I am doing it, you want to use very little to no pressure. Basically, once you catch it, just put a little bit of pressure. Don't try to dig in real hard. I mean, if it doesn't seem to flake off easy, just wetting it up with some alcohol. Should come right off, because you do not want to damage this. Otherwise, you'll be getting a new board. So, get some more alcohol here. It doesn't look like there's any dust. They make actual cleaner for this. It's called a recertifier. I have some at my actual shop, but I don't have any here. This was a laptop I'm working on to refurbish. And once you get a nice, you get a nice flat clean surface here, just take a dry portion of your paper towel and dry it off. The silicone chips will be nice and shiny, almost like glass. Most of your desktops have a shield over them. Now, what you did with the CPU, you will now do for the heatsink right here. You have to clean all that off as well. And that is going to be just as hard and as crusty as the stuff on the actual CPU. I don't think we have to worry much about the GPU. No, that thermal tape still seems... You want it to feel a little moist. You don't want it to be, dry. Just let that stuff soak there for a little bit and some alcohol, and just give it a good rub. But Boy, this stuff was old. More or less, I wouldn't say old. Just is very dry. Just have to keep working at it here. Slowly but surely. Um, you can try to scrape it off. That doesn't always work. Try not to scratch the heatsink as well. That may impede. Not too sure if impede was the proper word for that, but hinder the performance of the heatsink. May. But I don't know if I have any more alcohol. Might need some. This is kind of old alcohol. Might be no good. But I mean, I wouldn't say no good, just not as strong. Usually doesn't take us long to get these clean. So but sometimes it can be a time consuming, tedious process. Try to get that out of my way. As long as your thermal tape here Still seems soft and moist. Should be okay. I believe the CPU was to blame here. I'm going to go ahead and blow out this fan with my portable duster. And yeah, wasn't much dust in it at all. Okay. So now we're going to take our thermal grease here and apply some straight to the CPU chips. And be careful you don't squeeze out too much at once. You do not want too much. On the you do not want too much on the CPU. You can just take the end and smear it around a little bit. Nice. Try to even it out. Have a nice even coating of it. Once the heat sink is remounted to it, it will smash it down a good bit. I like to use thermal take. I've just had good luck with it. But okay. Once you have new thermal grease applied to your CPU, you can put the cap back on it, and you're done with that. Here comes the fun part. That's putting all this back together. So, if you take a look, earlier we took off a mounting bracket. As you can see, there's a piece of thermal tape there. That still feels good. And you want it to be a little moist, leave like a almost like a silicone feeling on your fingers. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and put that back on first, because we'll need the screws to screw into these mounts. So go ahead and place that back on. You want to make sure that doesn't fall out. And what we'll do now is take this heatsink, go ahead and pull the fan cord out of the way so it's out of your way. And we will need the two CPU bracket screws. What we're going to do is we're going to try to set that back down in here. Once we get that on, we'll go ahead and grab our screwdriver here. As we're running into an issue, there's nothing to support the bottom plate. It's falling out, so we'll have to do this at an angle, like so. And just go ahead and Set that in. Hold that there with your fingers. Go ahead and line your holes up there. Grab a screw. And yes, I am using a magnetized screwdriver. Most people do not recommend to use one. I use one. It becomes very difficult to work with without one. I've used one for years. They're not super magnetized, but I've never had any issues with using a, you know, magnetized screwdriver. I also do not wear an ESD strap. Never had a use for those either. Never had the need for one. Um, so once you get these screws in place, you want to just make sure that they're nice and tight. Excuse me. Now go ahead and remember to plug in your fan. A lot of times people will forget to plug those in. That includes me, and you end up having to go through the disassembly all over again. And to be honest, you really don't want to do that, especially after you know, have all this trouble. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead, now that that's done, we're going to go ahead and place everything back together. And that may be difficult. Especially with these ribbon cables. Probably going to want to try to get those. You got the ribbon cables right here, these three, by the cd-rom drive. If you place the board in without making sure that these are lifted upwards, they will be below the motherboard where they don't need to be. They need to be above the motherboard. And that can be tricky all on its own. But if you have a pry tool or something of that nature, once again I stress that you have to be very careful with these. They do have a tendency to tear. They can also break. But all these ribbon cables that were above need to stay above. So we need to try to get them to come back above. Take a look here. Take a look, see. Now this job should be, you know, Some computers will be, well, laptops will be easier than others. Some will be difficult, like you see here, where there's not a lot of room to work. Things are placed very tightly together, things like that. Don't let that, scare you off. Um, that does happen from time to time, especially in the repair world. Sometimes you have to improvise in the way things go back together. But as I said, just be careful. Okay. And a lot of times you'll be sitting here playing, getting other cables out, and you'll end up losing cables you've already gotten out back into the underneath the board, which can be a little time consuming. But now it looks like we have everything back where it goes. Fan is plugged in. You always want to make sure you plug the fan back in. I've made that mistake before. Now the fun part is small ribbon cables. Trying to get those back in. I have another pair of tweezers here. May help do the job. Somehow they got bent. There we go. Bend them back here a little bit. Okay, what do we got going on here? There we go. There we go. Snap right back down. And you want to make sure you get your motherboard back in the proper position. Sometimes you may think it is in the proper position and it really is not. So, doesn't hurt to always double check. We'll go ahead and put that back in there. Ethernet jack. Okay. Let's start putting everything else back together here. On most ribbon cables and laptops, there'll be little tabs on the side that you can use to push the cable back into place, and once you get it, just lock it down. Your easier cables, of course, are these push down ones. You just line them up and push down. Doesn't really get much simpler than that. Grab this one here. Lock that one back in place. These three right here are going to be a little bit of a challenge due to their placement. I'm sorry, my feet keep hitting that. So, we'll see if we can't get these back in with little to no issues. I mean, don't get too discouraged if you can't get one back in right away. Just, I look at it a certain way. They put it in here. It means I can put it in there. But they definitely can be a pain. Poking a small bit here. See if I can't get this to pop open. Normally we use a paper clip. I don't have a paper clip handy, so hopefully one of these bits here will do the job. Thinking if I was to remove this tray, it would give me the space I need to get them back in. Might be able to get them here if I lift the tray up. Take the plastic pry tool here. Stick that up under there for a second. Don't forget your anti-theft device for your keyboard lock. Make sure you put that back in there, because you'll end up going, you'll go to use it, and I mean, it'll work. Just make it a little easy to steal. So you really can never have too many tools when it comes to this stuff, especially an assortment of picks and whatnot. Alright. I got that one in. I'll go for number 2. But gotta think outside of the box sometimes, you know. And don't think you need to go to college to learn how to do this stuff. A lot of stuff college couldn't teach you, or even a school in general. Most of this is all hands-on. Alright, now that we have those 3 in, once again, never get discouraged. Go ahead and clear out from under this. Now we had 3 screws that held the board down. This is always the fun part. Trying to remember where they went. Doesn't hurt maybe to take a picture of the board and where the screws are placed. Other times, some boards have little arrows. Here's a little arrow. Here's an arrow. And that will normally tell you where to place the screws. Right there. A screw goes in there. There's a screw in there. I believe a screw went over here. There were 2 hidden screws. One here. And one here. Go ahead and cover those back up. With the insulating tape. Kind of like a foam. This is the part I never really like. But, okay. Now we can go ahead and put our Wi-Fi card back in. Go ahead and reattach our cables. Like I said earlier in the video, they do make a tool for this, which will make life a lot easier. But pretty much once you get them lined up over the, just snaps right back into place. Like that. Go ahead and get your wire tucked back in where it goes. Okay, well, now that they're all back in place, we can go ahead and grab this here. Now earlier, this piece felt, sorry, gotta watch those feet. Now earlier, this piece fell off and a LED light tray fell off. And I did not see where they fell from. But, process of elimination, there are 4 holes right here in the screen that were for lights. And this plastic tray distributes the light from one LED across all four. And that goes right there. Okay, put that back into place. Kind of a bad design, it kind of just snaps over. Really no way to secure that. I'm not a big fan of that design actually. Get the Bluetooth cable along with the SATA connector there. Now the other piece I did not see how it came off was this tray here. Now, with me looking at it, to see where and possibly how it fits. That's what holds the indicator lights in. So the three screws that I unscrewed in the beginning, that you'll see when you take the battery cover off, do not need to be unscrewed. Those three screws in this gray bar can actually stay in. They will hold your light bar and your switch buttons in. I know this video's got to be getting a little long. Really shouldn't take too long to do this job. I mean, this is a more complicated one. Easier stuff. Really takes no time at all. But what we're going to do now, to reattach this, we're going to hold the front panel like this. We will line up, I don't know if you can see it, but this ribbon cable here has to go in this port right here. So what we'll do is we'll hold it up, line it over each other. Once you feel it start to go in, could take a second. Sometimes these can be a little pesky. Usually not though. Get it lined up there. This one's being a little booger. There it goes. Once that's in, carefully flip it over so it does not come unplugged. Go ahead and snap your top plate on. Close the lid to hold the top plate in. And go ahead and reapply all the screws where they go. And for the sake of you not having to sit here and watch me put a bunch of screws back in, I'll show you that it still powers up and works perfect. Well, I'm not too sure if it's still going to overheat. Hopefully it does not. It should not. That thermal paste that was previously on there was pretty old, but we'll go ahead and power it up and I'll show you that it still works. There we go. And as you can see, everything seems to be working. So we have successfully done the job without damaging the computer. Touchpad works. Keyboard still works. So, okay. Well, I thank you all very much for watching. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. You all have a wonderful day. Bye bye.